Hey guys, so here we are for the second episode of Rip Walk. So once again, this is the show that inspired by ESPN's Part Interruption. We're trying to go for like a really quick, fascinating format, just covering what happened in the last week of the LCS. And hope you guys like it. Please send us some feedback.
All right.
Yeah. So the first, yeah.
First,
Sorry.
all right. First thing we got definitely want to tackle is the rise of that age-old TSM COG rivalry. They're tied for first place for the first time in God knows how long, and both teams had some really methodical play this week. You can definitely see that they've tightened things up, and I feel like they're the two teams that have figured out like the current meta the quickest.
Yeah. So the one thing about them that's been really unique has just been, like neither of these teams were particularly well known for, their rotational type style of gameplay. Like TSM has never been really known as like a really great rotational team. They're more of like the skirmishers.
Yeah, they
But
team fight and
like,
take
in their match
advantage
against Team
after.
Liquid, they had some game-winning rotations that were so key. Like just farming up that Tristana, a really good understanding of like their power spikes. Like there was a moment when they were actually up by 3,000 gold, but instead of fighting, they just try to farm up that Wild Turtle Tristana, and that's like the type of style that like you'd expect from like a team like a really like fast, like deep, like
Cloud9.
quick. Yeah, like Cloud9, understanding that type of thing going on, and we saw that from TSM. That's a really great sign that can happen. Maybe like Bjergsen's really evolved as a shot caller. Maybe they developed up their system a little bit, getting some other people contributing. Like obviously shot calling is such a black box, we can't tell what's going on. But it really looks like something has changed. Like the one play that really stuck in my mind was when Wild Turtle rotated bot, and he shoved out like 4 waves of creeps. He got the tower, and then he based in time to rejoin their team for that fight, and he picked up first blood on Phoenix. That was so key for them, like in that one moment.
And he saved
And,
Santorin's ass so hard right there. Like,
yeah, he did.
That's like one of the keys there with TSM and COG too. Is they both have like this player that's been getting a lot of community flack for almost the past year,
Yeah.
and Turtle and Link for COG have really kind of stepped up their game. Especially
Yeah.
with Turtle. Turtle and Lustboy were losing lane to pretty much everybody last summer, and now
Yeah.
they're not. And part of it is we're seeing a lot of lane swaps in the LCS right now, and TSM has been doing a great job of swapping when they are going to fall when they have a losing lane matchup. Like Darius gave an interview after their win today, where he specifically mentioned Wild Turtle just like, and that's what you need. Like you never want to be the cockpit just like, yeah, no, I know I'm gonna lose a match, I got this. Wild Turtle was honest with his team, just like, hey, I can't win this matchup. Can we lane swap? And Darius is like, yeah, I got this. Darius went down lane, and despite the fact Darius was against a Caitlyn and it was a Janna, right? Like trying to like save a
Yeah.
tower against that combination is just like nearly impossible. So the fact that TSM was able to come out of the lane phase, winning all 3 lanes, which is one stupid because Bjergsen was Xerath against Ari, so Phoenix takes a lot of the blame for the loss in that
Yeah.
regard because Xerath
That's like one of the hardest
deck.
counter matchups.
Yep.
And the weirdest thing was, like, Bjergsen wasn't even playing his Xerath particularly well. Like, he was really on point with some of the skill shots, but his
ult
ultimate was
bad.
really,
Yeah, his ult was bad.
his ultimate was really off point. Like, it was really weird actually. He hit so many of those like really long range crucial stuns that would
Yeah.
like just like turn a fight around. But then he'd whiff like all 3 ultimate shots, trying to like clean up. It was actually quite interesting how that happened. But
Well, I mean, he kept
that
trying to
just
hit Ari.
emphasizes the
Ari's hard to hit.
yeah. That just emphasizes the role really of Wild Turtle, like just really stepping up as a carry. And I mean, that guy's always been a really good team fighter. Like, it's just that like his laning phase has been a little off in the past season. Right now, looking like it's catching back up. Partially due to lane swaps, but we'll have to see where he goes from there. Like I mentioned, he was one of the players we were excited to look at and see where he could go heading into the split. So
Yeah.
glad to see he's doing well.
And Link has a last split. There was some stat where Link was like ahead of his lane opponent at level 9 in like 80 to 90% of his games.
Yeah.
But then he would go do these really bad roams where he just kind of sit in a bush. And he's just not doing that. He's just playing his game in the middle. And the addition of Zion Spartan's huge because CLG has a threat in the top lane for the first time since Hotshot GG,
Yeah.
which is a long time.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
like you can't just camp double lift and hope he goes on tilt because he gets that I need a carry mentality. It's not work. Like Zion Spartan's a rock.
Yeah.
So
Which is funny that you'd say that about him, because that historically has been his reputation. But like, he's playing the meta champs, he's going in on tanks, like
he's
been
buying
becoming like
into COG.
almost even like maybe a better version of Tyrus, like just from these last few games.
I
And
think
it's really exciting.
he hasn't been. He's buying into what COG's coach is selling. Like when he was on Coast,
Yeah.
he probably felt that he needed to do what he needed to do to win. And Dignitas really started to fall apart last split when he was on them. I think with COG, he's on a team where he knows he's got teammates that can help. So I think he just feels really comfortable. And he said that in his interview after game that he's just like, I'm just doing my part. And I think this is a COG. I mean, COG started off strong in each of the past 2 splits. And I think this time they might be able to keep it up the entire time, because it's just the reasons for success are not flukes. They're stuff that's actually surprising that they're this good already. I would have thought it would take a little longer, but I think COG and TSM are both in really good spots right now. They both have relatively easy weeks next week, so they're in good shape. Which leaves us to
one last thing I wanted to just
quickly
touch on. One thing I want to quickly touch on, just speaking of fitting in, is that neither of these jungle additions have actually really impressed. Like I mean, they've impressed in the sense that they're just people who they're not afraid to go in. They're not afraid to die for their team. Like Smithy had that one Vi ult onto Sneaky, and he tanked 2 tower shots, and basically he just traded himself for Sneaky. But that was so worth it for the team. And Santron's the same, but he's just not unafraid to camp mid.
I think he's looking a little better
mechanically adept as the predecessors.
I think
he's been looking better too.
He's been looking better than Smithy. And that's because he and Bjergsen just their synergy is really good. That's just it.
Yeah.
And TSM's hair game, by the way, is really on point. And there's one more team that's 3-1. And it's the team we actually predicted that would be good. No one else believed us, but Gravity is 3-1, and they're tied for first in the NALSCS. You heard it here.
Well, they did have a pretty easy schedule.
Yeah, they did.
But they actually could be first place indisputed if they beat the random team with 3 substitutes. But speaking of Gravity, just some things I wanted to cover. Their shot calling, I think people will watch them play and say that their shot calling isn't good, which I agree with, but it's hard to really say that their shot calling is bad, and here's what I mean. There's a lot of opportunities that Gravity can take to end the game, and they won't necessarily take them. Or there's other times where they'll take objectives under really adverse conditions. And the weird thing about them is that even though I think that a lot of teams doing those types of objectives or making those types of risks aren't exactly the most intelligent thing to do, for Gravity, it really works because, once again, it's their unique understanding of team fighting. I think they're okay with, for example, the dig comp. They could have won that dig game, maybe 10, 20 minutes earlier if they did a tower dive. But they just kept, waiting. They kept baiting for dig to come out, and then they fought dig, and then they just won on, even ground. And then the same thing happened in today's game against Team Coast. They did, a terrible Baron, but then they turn around, and then they tied the team fight up, and then they won the next 2 team fights to, seal the deal. Yeah, these aren't exactly the best teams, which is why I'm still worried about whether or not that'll work against the best teams. But it's really interesting that their conceptualization of the game.
I think part of the reason is that I think the one with Dignitas was just a loss to Winter Fox made it so they were too cautious. It's one of those, and that happens with teams that are relatively new put together. Is after they get shocked by something like that, they just got stomped. The next game or the next few games, they're a little too cautious and not willing to capitalize on objectives.
The Winter Fox game.
And I still
the Winter Fox game. People. Yeah, wait. Sorry, you go first.
Yeah, I still think Saints looking a little rough. He's dying a lot for free right now. So I think that was their problem against Coast, is he kept dying for free when they should have had a lead. That's what let Coast get back in the game.
Yeah. And I agree. They just have these bizarre moments where they just get picked off, and you're like, where's he? Particularly with Saint. I think another player who does that a lot is actually Keen. You'll see Keen he'll be off trying to do his thing, and this happened with him on Corky a few times. So he has a really long range escape. He'll be trying to do his thing, and then he'll go, oh crap, this isn't the situation that I should be in. So he'll try to bounce out, and then it won't exactly work out for them. Like I said, I'm just worried for them in terms of the higher teams just being able to really punish that.
I agree.
And I'm not sure if they will, because we haven't seen it yet. Cloud9 certainly wasn't able to. Cloud9 actually, people say Cloud9 played bad, but actually that game Cloud9 played pretty well. The one player on Cloud9 who was playing poorly was High, but part of it was just he was getting blown up so quickly by just the Keen Haunter assassination combo that actually I thought that was actually a game where Cloud9 played pretty well. It's just that I feel like Gravity's style kind of counters Cloud9's a little bit because in Gravity Cloud9 is facing a team that is actually even better at team fighting than they are. So
That's
you'll
all
see
Gravity's
them,
good at. That's like what.
Yeah,
that's
honestly, that really is they're not that good at other things. They're just really godlike at team fighting, and they're really above average at finding picks.
They're like
the
a
one thing I want to
slightly
notice,
lesser version of old TSM. If they get
no,
objectives, they win a team fight, and then they get the objective. They're not out-rotating.
No, that's true. The one thing about Gravity I wanted to note is that a lot of times their casters are talking about their good vision control, and I brought this up in my Gravity preview too. They do have good vision control, but their school of vision control isn't exactly like for example, you think of good vision control, you think of Dandy and Mata warding a lot of these strategic points on the map. The Gravity's school of vision control is to just buy a shit ton of wards and to put them down whenever it's convenient. You'll see them put wards on the map that are right next to you. You don't actually need those wards, but then how they'll come in and clear them and they'll still have a ward there and then they'll be able to get a pick. So maybe they're just geniuses and they're even they've hit the next level of vision control. But I'm what is going on?
Bunny's Thresh is still godlike though, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so even if his ward placement's just let's just throw them all down and hope one works. So we talked about 3-1 teams, and there's a team we probably thought we'd be talking about as one of the top teams after last week that we're not, and that would be Team Liquid, who last week they beat two teams that weren't necessarily top teams by any stretch of the imagination. They took down Impulse, and then they took down
CLG. Who's looking pretty good.
But CLG with Benny, which I think is a big difference. And this week they faced Cloud9 and TSM. Two teams are obviously, even with Cloud9 against TL, I think they showed what they still have that same level. They have the ability to play to the Cloud9 level. They're just not being consistent getting it. Their game against Cloud9's games against Liquid was classic Cloud9. And I think Cloud9 might be able to get that. I think their issue is not High, but we'll get to that later. But after going 2-0 against a weak Earth schedule because Liquid, Tip, and COG were both missing a player. Granted, Liquid was too, but Keith obviously did great.
He did.
So they went from 2-0 the Dream to 0-2 the Dream. So what are your thoughts on Liquid?
A few thoughts off the top of my head. Phoenix is not looking good. That guy's not looking good. After his first game, I tweeted something I don't think Phoenix is good. And then someone was like, it's just his first game. And it was just his first game. And then he had a really good game after that against CLG. But I just don't think he's... it just doesn't seem like he's that good yet. Honestly, Ahri versus Xerath, he got the last pick, counter pick. Yeah. That's what Team Liquid was trying to build around, letting him flaunt his wide champion pool and find out what's going on there. He got the last pick, counter pick. Didn't quite work. And then he just... I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It just doesn't seem like he's playing super well. And it looks like Team Liquid is falling back into what they were last season, which is a really good top, a really good jungle, and a really good support. I did not think Piglet was playing that well. These guys, maybe they just have to iron out a little bit of these communication issues, just playing for a while. Like we said, we didn't think Team Liquid would be. We expected them to lose to TSM and Cloud9, right? We thought that TSM and Cloud9 were better than the beginning of the season because of these communication issues.
Exactly, yep.
And, it's not...
And nerves.
It's not like their games were that bad. They were pretty bad. But I feel like what happened was more, they lost champion selection really hard. They picked comps that...
I agree.
That, didn't have a good amount of engage. So they were actually winning by a small amount in both of those games, but they weren't able to do anything with that. And I think that one issue is possibly that they're tunneling really hard on getting that mid lane counter pick. Specifically, I remember him hovering Orianna. I was like, Orianna would be a really great fit into this comp. Because, it would have been a classic protect the AD carry comp with Kayn, Jaina, Orianna, and you can combo with Narf. And then they switched to Ahri, and I was like, wow, Ahri, what a great counter pick against Xerath. And then I was like, wait, now they can't really engage these fights. they were engaging these fights with like a flash snowball from I Will Dominate or
Yep.
stuff like that. Like it
I
just didn't
thought
look that good.
Oriana.
So maybe they need to iron out a little bit.
I'm a
Yeah.
TSM fan, and I thought they picked Oriana just like, okay, they saw that TSM just got wrecked by Oriana last week at Slushie.
Yeah.
So they're probably like, all right, so we'll pick Oriana. See, that's a good thing because it seemed like TSM had forgotten how to play against Oriana. They were just walking over Oriana's ball,
Yeah.
and then all Slushie had to do is press R, and it was just like, okay, now your AD carry and mid laner are gone.
Yeah, it was not the best play from them for sure.
Phoenix was
And it
brought
looked like
in.
it was going to be a repeat. But
Phoenix was brought in because he's supposed to be like a lane bully. He's supposed to be able to be a really strong laner, and yeah, Bjergsen's the best mid laner in North America and possibly the West. But if you're Ari, you should be doing. Xerath is the most immobile mid champion around.
yeah.
I mean, when he's casting his spells, he even loses mobility. So
Yeah. No. So it's like I don't really know how I felt about that one. I was not impressed. Another player I also was impressed with was Piglet. I don't think Piglet played badly. He just was very lukewarm. You know, like he was just really lukewarm. Then again, like a lane swap isn't the best chance to show off your skills. You know what I mean? You're not exactly going to make those great outplays in a lane swap.
I don't think Liquid.
But in the team fight, he didn't look that good either.
Yeah, I don't think Liquid executed their comp properly because they did what they should have done. What TSM did, like they had Janna, Caitlyn. They should have bullied down bot lane tower and then immediately rotated mid lane tower. Except like the Xerath comp counters that. Cause like how, as much as it's great to have a Janna and a Caitlyn, Xerath is guaranteed wave clear. He can wave clear from the second tower, from the inner tower. So it's just like it's not even.
Yeah, they just got really outpicked. I felt.
And Piglet was
really outpicked.
I mean, all the Korean imports this week didn't do good. I mean, Impact certainly bounced back in his second game.
It wasn't NA didn't do that good.
What?
No, it wasn't NA didn't do good. Like, Fnatic are still rolling. So.
Oh yeah, that's.
But
the
no,
thing.
I agree. The ones at NA really did not.
No, they didn't. Helios looked okay, but Avalon. It seemed like
Yeah, Helios was really carrying them in the Winter Fox Coast game. I want to say. Who did Winter Fox? Yeah. No, it wasn't Coast. What are you doing?
No,
it was
Winter Fox
Dig.
played it.
It was Winter Fox versus Dignitas.
But the thing with like Avalon, like
I saw Shifter and I was like, oh yeah, he's like Coast, right?
Yeah. No.
Did anyone think he would be good? So I mean, I guess you can't be too surprised.
Yeah.
But,
no. My thing with. I guess it seemed like Avalon had never played in a lane swap before, and lane swaps were common for most of last year. So I don't know what was going on there because he got wrecked. Like it was really bad. Yeah. Like he got really destroyed by TSM, and then today, I mean, he didn't do too much better. So yeah, I mean, they beat Dignitas, but it's freaking Dignitas.
Yeah, Dig is a team that we really overestimated. I thought Shifter and Crumbs would be better. They're not that good. Crumbs in particular is really living up to his nickname of Domes. But, yeah.
Yes.
And I thought their top three would be better. They're not as good as I thought they would be.
Yep, I agree.
Unfortunately.
Crumbs seems like normally he starts off good and then falls off. He started off bad, and if it gets worse, I mean, they kept the player. Like Dig always had bad shot calling. Crumbs has always been the shot caller. So like, as long as I feel like maybe as long as Crumbs is there, maybe they're just never going to be able to be as good as they should be or could be because he keeps making these really bad calls. And honestly, I think Core JJ has actually been like not bad.
I mean, he's wearing the the old Kiwi Kid ball and chain. So, honestly, dude, the game today where they banned out Annie.
They banned Annie.
That just made my head hurt.
It's like it's a new level.
That just made my head hurt.
That's a new level of self-destructive right there. A new level of self-destructive. They banned their only champion their support player can play at an LCS level. So that was good. So not a good week for Korean imports in North America.
No, it was not.
So, I guess the team we
also not a good week for Cloud9.
Yeah, no, we touched on it already. With high struggles, and high struggles are large part of Cloud9 struggles because one of the key ways to beat a team is to pretty much get their shot caller on tilt. And I think one of the main reasons
Yeah,
Cloud9 is underperforming is because High is underperforming. And
yeah,
because he's under so much stress, and when you're losing lane all the time, like anyone who's played League, even if you're just doing solo queue, like you feel under pressure.
yeah.
So I think it's just causing his decision making to be a little lackluster. But I honestly don't think High is the biggest reason for Cloud9's struggles. I think it's balls.
Why would you say that?
So last week, when C9 went 0-2, they invested
Yeah,
everything in getting balls ahead. Balls had 50 to 80
yeah,
CS
they did.
leads in both games, way ahead of his opponent. And yet, once it got to the mid to late game, he had less of an impact than either.
He's not exactly a great Gnar or Lissandra, is the problem.
No, his Gnar is.
Like, he's just not that good on those champs.
Yeah, the meta is not in his favor. I mean, he could be playing Renekton, but it seems like after like NA's brief, like, hey, let's see what Renekton's like last week, they just kind of like, all right, he's still not good.
They're like, never mind, Rex sucks.
It's like
And
let's
then
go
they,
back to Sion when we want a tanky top laner. So
yeah,
I think that, and this week, I don't think I mean, I think he was pretty. He lost hard, I think, to Zion Spartan. The game starts with lane swap. By time Zion Spartan and Balls were in the top lane together, Balls was dominating him. I mean, Zion Spartan was dominating Balls.
he was getting dominated. Yeah.
So it's I think
No.
Cloud9's was so used to having this just like rock in the top lane that I think
Yeah.
without him that throws off what they can do, and I think High being subpar right now, it's really throwing off their shot calling. So there's like
Yeah.
there's no reason to keep High, I guess, if the shot calling is there. I won't contribute that circuitry yet because it's still really early. I mean, High started
Yeah,
off
I mean, I
week
still think they have
before.
a good chance to bounce back.
I do as well. And High started off week before, like he did in the summer split, and picked up steam as the season went on. So
Yeah, he
I
did.
certainly don't think that Cloud9 is done, but I think they have a lot of weaknesses right now. And oh, one thing, why are sports buying mages or Majais? Lemonation bought one. But it's just like this common thing we've been seeing with support players right now is just buying Majais. It's almost like it's just not working out a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that happens because you do lose a significant investment into your you do lose a significant investment into like items. Like for example, instead of a Jazz, you could have had like a chalice, for, just as an example. And perhaps you have a little bit more mana. I mean, I don't like I said, this is one of those things that I don't feel too qualified talking about, but it definitely doesn't seem like just from a common sense standpoint, it definitely doing seem like you should be buying that item when when you're
But you have so
when your
little
team's
gold to
not
get
doing
with.
too well.
Yeah, it's a
There's
big
just been
gamble.
honestly, there's just been a miasma over that team. Like I talked about it last week, but one player who's been unimpressive for me has actually been Meteos. And it's strange because Meteos, if you think about how Meteos likes to play, that like sometimes likes to farm a lot, like more of like a strategic style, like rather than like super heavy mechanical play. Rek'Sai actually seems like the perfect champion for him. And if you remember when he picked Rek'Sai against Gravity, people were like, okay, Cloud9 won the game. I can't believe that Meteos have Rek'Sai. And then they lost the game. And then they lost the game again today when he was on Rek'Sai. I feel like there's just been like a miasma. I mean, like I don't know, like it's still too early to put the nail in the coffin yet, especially because people were so hyped after that Team Liquid win.
Yeah.
And then kind of found out Piglet didn't have masteries, and that's kind of why Sneaky snowballed the lane. And then you're like, oh yeah, maybe that's not why. But just from those 4 games, it just really seems like they're a team that's really relying on Sneaky to carry the game right now.
Well,
And
High performed well in that game, and I think one of the things I'd like to see is the one game that High has done really well in was the game that he played a really supportive style mid laner. So maybe they need to start moving him off of the He's used to playing assassins, but maybe they just need to move him off of the assassin carry champions, move into a supportive champion, just rely on Sneaky being the best AD carry in North America to carry the day.
Yeah.
So I think that's what C9 needs to do. Honestly, the game they won was the debut of Kalista.
Oh yeah.
Was that the debut or is the COG game debut?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, the first game that he was played in was it was Cloud9 versus Liquid, and Kalista is now 4-0. 4-0 in the
Yeah, so I want
NLSS.
to talk a little bit about what I think about Kalista right off the bat. So, just a funny note, Forgiven thinks that Kalista's a terrible champ, by the way. He's very aggressively in that way he thinks it's terrible. And I think the reason why he says this is Kalista, people intuitively will think Kalista is a hyper carry champion because, great mobility, high damage from Ren. And to some extent that is true because,
They're like, hey,
she is capable. Yeah, she is capable of being like that. But the one thing to notice, she doesn't exactly have those like super strong steroids. So I think that she's like a champion that is more of like she's like a really strong carry for like the mid game. In the late game, she falls off a little bit when compared to like Tristana, for example, or Jinx. And I think the one key thing about her is honestly the objective control. She's got that like massive smite on her Ren, and
2,000 damage to
we
Baron.
noticed that when Gravity played it. That was the example that really stood out to me. When Gravity played it, they basically had Cop just whacking that dragon, and then he just rend it. Like you'd see Gravity on other parts of the map just tooling them around, and then Cop's just soloing these dragons. And we saw a similar thing with Sneaky doing that too. I think that's actually the biggest impact of Kalista, just an objective control machine.
Guaranteed objective control. Like you could not have that stolen by a Cho'Gath. A Cho'Gath with Smite could not
Unless you're really bad. Unless you're like really bad.
Because Cho'Gath's Feast deals 1,000 damage and Smite's like what's it maxed out at? Like 900. So I think Kalista could still secure that, and it's a great champion for Gravity because that saves Saint from having to Smite. So it's a great pickup. Really like that pickup for them. But Kalista, it's interesting because she's a counter. You wouldn't think she's a counter to a champion like Sivir, but Sivir, a lot of that damage is built into the boomerang, which she can dodge, and so Kalista is almost a counter pick, like because Sivir is one of the really strong meta picks for team fighting right now. So you can pick Kalista, and normally champions like Kalista, they're the ones that they're weak, and you have to lane swap. Like that's why Wild Turtle had to would lane swap against who did he go against? Was it Graves?
Caitlyn, yeah, it was Caitlyn.
He didn't play Kalista that game. He played Kalista yesterday.
No, Graves is a counter to Kalista because you can't dodge Buckshot if he jumps up to you, and his auto attacks will out damage yours.
Well, yeah, and it's the passive.
He'll just blow you up. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, if you could somehow dodge Buckshot, then you could outduel Graves. But if you can't dodge Buckshot, then you're not going to outduel Graves. And that's pretty hard to dodge. So Graves is definitely one of the primary counters to Kalista in that regard. And also, while Kalista is a strong team fight champion in the mid game, Graves is still the best one. So Graves kind of supersedes what Kalista's best time of the game is. Especially because Hurricane...
Absolutely.
Kalista has a very odd power spike where... when you're ahead, it's great because she's really good taking those squishies, but it takes so long to either get crit or to get Last Whisper in Kalista's item build because they typically go, unless you're sneaky, they're going Hurricane and then Bloodthirster. And then you saw Wild Turtle go Phantom Dancer for the extra mobility in order to dodge around the team fights. And going Phantom Dancer there, like that's really cutting down on the amount of damage you can deal.
Yeah.
Because ideally it's Infinity Edge, Stack Shiver, Phantom Dancer, and then you go into Last Whisper. That's what or sometimes Bloodthirster if the enemy team isn't getting tank stats. So Kalista's item spikes are very odd. They're very different from pretty much any other... I can't believe freaking Hurricane's a meta item right now. Who would have ever thought Hurricane would be meta? That's crazy. Alright, so we've spent a lot of time talking about NA, and EU didn't have as many marquee matchups this week. There was NA had we pretty much figured that TSM, Cloud9, and Liquid are going to be the three best teams by the end of split. Cloud9 obviously needs to prove to us a little more, but those are three teams, and they played each other. we didn't have any of that in the EU LCS this week. It was just a lot of like
Yeah.
really good teams beating on really bad teams, or a few really bad teams just kind of fighting for who was not quite as bad.
I mean, the Elements Rockhat game was pretty good. I still think that Rockhat has the potential to be pretty good. It's just that I think that people kind of overestimated, myself included, overestimated how good Overpower would be in the top lane.
Yep, I agree.
And Woolite was also overestimated a little bit. Like, I think Woolite, some people, I didn't personally think that was super strong. I thought he was more like the Mr. Rowles tier. You know, I still thought that Forgiven was better than him, and I thought that Reckles was better than him.
Yeah,
But I think people overestimated that a little bit. Like, or more accurately, I think they underestimated Celiver. And they're like, oh, as soon as they get rid of Celiver, they'll really jump up.
and that's the
And it
same
looks like
with.
to be much the same.
That was the same with what their last top laner, Zaxxas.
Yeah.
I think they underestimated Zaxxas. They figured, all right, so Overpower was a pretty solid to above average EU mid there. It's like, all right, so we'll move
Yeah, he was
him up.
decent. He had a watch handful.
He played Mordekaiser. That like
Yeah.
just playing Mordekaiser in the LCS like just instantly makes him like a perfect in my eyes, because I love any champ player that brings out Mordekaiser.
Maybe he'll play at top, dude. So, yeah,
too-
honestly, what have we seen of his famous overpower versatility? Like, he played GP top and they got stomped by CLG.
Well, we
Like-
might. We might. In 5.3, they're looking at, because obviously Mordekaiser is a gigantic suit of armor with a big ass mace. So the fact that he's been played as a burst mage for the past 2 seasons makes no sense to his like what he's supposed to be. So apparently they're going to try to bump him more into a tanky role. So we could actually see Mordekaiser on Overpower in the top lane. I cannot tell you how
That'd be really
excited I
funny.
would be. I'd be so excited. But also, Nuke Duck has been somewhat unimpressive. He continues to stick with this Magi's rush, which
Yeah,
is great if
it's
you're making plays, but he's not.
It's interesting, yeah. It's interesting.
I don't know. I think, honestly, I think it was one of those things, when a player is not in the LCS, like, for some reason, who we know is good, like, Nuke Duck was in the LCS in Season 3, Forgiven was in the LCS before he took a break. What happens is, a lot of times, is that the community's perception of them, it just starts, it's entirely on reputation now. It gets built up. It's like, guys, you remember how good Nuke Duck was? Like, wow, what's going to happen when he gets back to the LCS? And the same thing happened with Forgiven, and Forgiven was just like, oh, I'm just the best player in Europe. And he actually met the hype. But with
Yeah, he did.
But with Nuke Duck, it was one of those things where his reputation gained because of how people just like on Nip. Like Nip was the constant rumor of like they're gonna make LCS, they're gonna be really good. But then they would get to the promo tournament and for some odd reason just like go 0-3 against some random team. So Nuke Duck had this like really high reputation based on just like hype, literally hype, because he hadn't played for like a year. So I do feel like he's a bit overrated. I also just like
Yeah, I agree. I agree he's a little overrated.
one thing on Fnatic.
He's not. He by no means is he a bad player though.
No,
I think
he's
that's the
not.
key thing. No, like, he was overrated, but I think he's still maybe top 3/4. Like he was really holding his own against Frog.
Maybe okay, yeah, I could say
Yeah.
4, not.
I think
3.
he's top 3/4.
And one thing.
Who'd you put above him?
Oh God.
I guess Feathervin might be playing better. Feathervin is definitely playing better than he is. And like
Feathervin?
Frogin, and then
Frogin. I'm not sure. Would I put Fox up there?
Fox is playing really well too. But I think Fox and Nuke Duck are about the same level, but Fox is just on a much better
Actually,
team.
yeah.
Which like
Nuke
for
top
example,
4.
you
Yeah,
can
you're
camp
right.
Fox.
You're right.
Like
yeah.
you can camp Fox, but then Forgiven will just rampage through your team, and that's the next player.
But he
we're gonna talk
rampages
about.
anyway. He hasn't died yet. All right. So here's the thing with Forgiven. All right. So it came out this past week that there is a 10,000 euro buyout for if any team wanted Forgiven, they would have to pay Copenhagen Wolves 10,000 euro. And how many teams right now are thinking, why did we not pay Copenhagen Wolves 10,000 euro last summer? Like, all right,
Okay, this explains the whole thing. Look at this question. If you go on his Ask FM, it's like someone asks him, "Forgiven, can you give us the average amount of CS you miss in an LCS game?" And he says usually 3 to 10 CS. And like,
I miss 3 in a
13
wave sometimes. A lot of the time.
he averages 13 CS a minute. So, like,
Yeah,
this
he
guy's
almost
pretty good
never
at League of
missed CS.
Legends.
And there's like, think of like SK Gaming last year. Think if they had Forgiven last year at the World Championship instead of Candy Panda. Like Candy Panda was
Yeah.
decent. Candy Panda was like EU cop. Like he's an solid average 80 carry who's not gonna feed hard, but he's also not gonna like just like go on the rampage and Uzi something.
He wasn't
Forgiven
exactly
is,
like a hard. The one interesting thing about Candy Panda is that he somehow managed to do that when he was actually a pretty aggressive player. Like he just didn't, but he also didn't carry. Like,
aggressively passive.
quite odd.
Aggressively.
Yeah, it was quite odd how that happened. I don't even know how to describe
Yeah.
Candy Panda's play style.
And Fnatic
But,
and SK Gaming.
No, I agree. I think Forgiven definitely would have been a step up.
Fnatic and SK Gaming could both be 8-0. They face each other in week 5.
Yeah.
I think it's one of them plays Elements next week. It is SK Game plays Elements next week.
SK.
So theoretically, the hype
Yeah.
train could.
Fnatic already beat Elements.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we'll see what happens
SK
there.
plays them. All right, so last few things to run down. All right, so skipping back to NA real quick. All right, so Coast is now 1-3. They've lost the 3 games they've lost. They were all had moderate to almost sizable leads in, and then inexplicably either tossed at Baron or Dodo landed like the binding from the godlike blinding to that was
a bad. That was not. That was a bad. That was really good from Dodo, but that was also kind of weird because Coast had 2 people step dodge it. Like some of Coast's people dodged it, and Mash didn't dodge it. And
like,
he was also too far front.
It's like
so that was just tragic. Like shouldn't have happened.
That's the tank dodging when he probably should have taken it. So that's
one point to note is that also Coast could have done a little bit. Coast might not have done as well if Chris didn't get an R, and teammate did get penalized with ban.
That's true. I guess the thing is like
yeah, but sorry, what were you gonna say?
Coast. We can't. It's hard to do what ifs, but Coast could really be 4-0, which is crazy. Like they've had decent leads and then thrown in all 3 of their losses. So like while I mean you can't what if they lost all 3 games, but Coast is like there's like this thin line, right? Coast is like this close. Yeah. They're like it's the line. 1-3-4-0, like on the other side line. It's ridiculous. Like this team, we could be talking about this team being like tied for first or in first place, but we're not because their shot calling is awful.
They haven't exactly been against the stiffest competition.
No, they haven't.
To be fair. But one thing to note is Chris has been playing really well. Yeah. Dude, did you see his play against St. Vicious today? He had the 1-inch Scion ultimate.
Yeah, no,
he just like knocked him out of his flag and drag.
All right.
Yeah,
so speaking of
that guy's playing really well.
Speaking of new teams, you might have underestimated a little bit. Team 8, they did just lose to Gravity.
Yeah.
But Team 8 has been they just lost to Impulse. They lost to they didn't lose to Gravity. Gravity
CLG. They lost to CLG with subs. They beat Coast and they beat TSM.
Yeah. So the thing with it's not they should have beat Tip. They let. Honestly, they should probably be Impulse. But here's it: no one's playing really that great, except for Kali Trolls. But they're finding ways to win, which I guess like winning is all that matters. I like what I've seen. Like Kali until this LCS started, he was never known for being a split pusher.
He wasn't.
He never really played the split push champion, so I was really happy to see him pick up Jax, because I think on Team 8 they're going to probably need to have him play like a Zion Spartan style circa Coast 2013.
Yeah.
Like his KD on Jax, it was just like, okay, well, it was okay. Like no one would think, wow, he has this monstrous carry, but the pressure he was able to exert by being elsewhere in the lane in the game, and his team could do other things, was huge. And while he got a little, I would be concerned because he did get a little cocky at some points, and also maybe a little like, okay, I need to carry this, and he's made some stupid decisions. Like if you're going to split push, you really need to ward out, and he didn't ward out well, so he got caught and died a few times. And then that one time he randomly engaged 1 versus 5 was weird too. But I'm liking what I'm seeing from Team 8.
Yeah, no, me too. The one thing is, I feel like Dodo has really stepped up. That guy was one of their best players when, like, there was a time period when Team 8 was honestly the second best challenger team, a really close rival to LMQ. This was in the first spring. We all know how good LMQ is. But the one thing is that back then Dodo was playing like a really at a really high level for supports. He was just a great engager, which made up for Calitrolls not being a great engager. Like,
Yep.
I mean, he played Malphite today and was really good at engaging, but normally when you think of Calitrolls, you think of like I don't know, like the Katarina, the Kha'Zix, the Fizz, like those like quick carry oriented champions. And Dodo was really compensating for that by being like this is godlike engager. He really fell off last split. He had poor vision control, poor engages, but he was looking back on point. That godlike binding on Mash. He had a pretty good Nami performance. The other thing is, I think Slushie and Maple they're just hot and cold. Like, Slushie had that really good game against TSM, and then he kind of, had a pretty bad casting game, pretty bad Orianna game. And then Maple wasn't doing that great on Graves. Then he had a really good Graves game. I feel like if all the gears are clicking, this is actually a pretty scary team. But I still really, I just don't really like their play style. I feel like it's, it's kind of fundamentally flawed because of how, your main carry is also your main, your main carry is your top laner who should be answering the split push. So I just don't really like that, and I feel like their team is kind of inconsistent / has champion pool problems still. Like, I definitely underestimated them by saying they'd be last place. That was pretty much the reason why they were last place, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think they, recalibrating, maybe they're, I don't know, I still don't think they're better than Coast. I really don't think they're better than Coast. They beat Coast, but I didn't think they were better than Coast.
Yeah, Dig is the worst team in the LCS.
I think Dig is the worst team by far.
Dig is the worst. I think you might have given them a little too much credit, thinking, but they're really bad.
I mean, I think Teammate is better. Based on results, Teammate is certainly much better than Coast. I do think Coast has potential to be a better team. But yeah, I guess Teammate should be in the maybe the 8th spot, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Dignitas, just based on this week of results. So yeah, I certainly underestimated them, and I think they'll do a lot better. Actually, Maple made a funny joke. He was talking to Travis, that Travis interview. He was like, yeah, like, we said they'd go 3-17, so he just needs to win one more game now. And then he lost to Tip. So
who said he'd go 3-17?
On our
rankings,
we
did.
Yeah. And
so we got another.
Win one more game. Yeah, that great shout out.
Yeah.
And then,
all right, so
then he lost to Tip, so hopefully he didn't curse himself.
So just to close things out, who are your top 3 in NA?
Top 3 in NA, TSM.
Okay, in order. Put them in order.
In order, yeah, I think TSM is the best. TSM is certainly the best. Great rotational play, good mechanics. That loss to Teammate, it seemed like kind of like it didn't seem like a fluke loss, but it seemed like they kind of underestimated Teammate. They gave Teammate all of their champs, and then they played pretty badly. So I think that they're the best. And then after that, I still think Team Liquid is probably the second best team. I really think Team Liquid is the second best team. They had bad losses this week. I'm not as sold of it as I should be. And then in the third place, I'd probably put Gravity or CLG. I want to wait to see both teams play each other because it's interesting how those two teams have such disparate styles. Like, CLG is more of like they're bringing back the old Monte Cristo rotations, with that Caitlyn moving around the map, Sivir, just a rotating team. I think Gravity is the more like team fighting style. I'll give it a Gravity right now. I do think Gravity is better than CLG just because I just still feel like CLG is. I don't feel like CLG is as sustainable for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I mean, I'm a really big Gravity fan, so I'm probably just being biased. But that would be my top 3 for Europe. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say I'm going TSM, COG, and then Liquid. So that's an interesting order. I know, but I'm a big fan of head-to-head, which also seems to be like a bit paradoxical because Liquid beat COG last week, but Liquid lost to. My logic is this: Liquid lost to Cloud9, COG beat Cloud9, and also TSM beat Liquid, which is why TSM is ahead of them. And then I'd put Gravity 4th and Cloud9 5th. So yeah, I have Cloud9 5th, which is shocking. And then an EU.
They are in a very heavy slump right now.
EU, I just have SK, Fnatic, and Elements. I feel like that's in that order. I feel like that's pretty much what everyone would have right now.
SK, Fnatic, and Elements. Yeah, pretty much. Very hard to argue what's going on in EU.
Yep.
So I guess that wraps up another episode.
That wraps up episode 2 of Riftwalk.
Suggestions, trying to make the show, the quick takes, just a fun quick show. Hopefully you guys like it. Please send us some suggestions, and signing off.
All right, have a good one, guys.